You can quote Seneca. You can cite the research. You can tell yourself 100 times that the thought isn't real and still lie awake at 2 a.m. replaying a conversation from 3 years ago. That's not a knowledge problem. Your brain is running a program you didn't write, and until you see the program, you can't change it. In this video, I'll show you number one, why your brain isn't malfunctioning when it overthinks, is doing exactly what it was conditioned to do, and why that distinction changes everything. Number two, what Vedic seers call chitta vritti, what neuroscientists call the default mode network, and why they're describing the exact same loop mapped 3,000 years apart. Number three, a single daily practice that interrupts the loop at the root, not just the surface, no apps, no therapist required. Let's get into it. A man named Arjun, mid-30s, sharp, successful by every visible measure, once told me something I haven't forgotten. He said, I know the thought is irrational. I can literally watch myself thinking it and know it's not real. But knowing that does nothing. The thought just keeps going. That's the part nobody talks about. The gap between understanding something and being free of it. That gap has a name. And once you see it, the whole thing changes. Arjun isn't unusual. Most people who struggle with overthinking are also the most self-aware people in the room. They've read the books, they've done the journaling, they know intellectually that the future is just imagination and the past is just memory. One of the most common things people write in comment sections about this topic is exactly that. Overthinking comes from thinking about the past, which is just memories, and the future is just imagination. But I still can't stop. That sentence is the whole problem, right there. Knowing something isn't the same as being free of it. And the reason is this: overthinking isn't a thought problem, it's a pattern problem, a pattern that was laid down long before you were old enough to question it. Vedic philosophy has a word for this, samskara. It translates roughly as mental impressions. Every experience you've ever had, every reaction you've repeated, every loop you've run through, it leaves a groove, like water running over rock. The more times it runs, the deeper the channel. The deeper the channel, the more automatically the water flows into it. This isn't metaphor. Modern cognitive science calls it synaptic consolidation. The more a neural pathway fires, the more efficiently it fires next time. Your brain literally builds infrastructure around the patterns you repeat. It's not punishing you. It's being efficient. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do. The problem is that most of the patterns running your mind right now were formed when you were a child, in a body that felt threatened, in situations where hypervigilance was actually useful. The brain learned, scan for danger, replay past mistakes to avoid future ones, project forward to prepare for worse cases. That was protective once. It kept you safe, but you're not in that situation anymore. The pattern doesn't know that. It just keeps running. This is what the Vedic framework calls conditioning. Not a character flaw, not a disorder, but accumulated impressions that filter every experience before you're even conscious of it. And here's why this matters for stop overthinking mind tricks that actually work. You can't think your way out of a thinking pattern. The pattern has to be seen from outside itself. The takeaway here is simple but not easy. Stop treating your overthinking as a malfunction. It's a conditioned pattern. That means it can be reconditioned, but only if you stop fighting the symptom and start addressing the groove. About 3,000 years ago, Vedic sages sat with this problem, not in a lab, not with fMRI machines, but with something arguably more precise: sustained, disciplined attention turned inward. And what they found, they named chitta vritti. Chitta is the mind stuff, the substance of consciousness. Vritti means fluctuations or literally whirlpools. Chitta vritti is the constant restless spinning of the mind around itself. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali open with the statement that the entire practice of yoga is aimed at one thing: the cessation of chitta vritti, not the elimination of thought, the cessation of the unconscious spinning. Now, fast forward to 2001. A neuroscientist named Marcus Rachel is running brain scans and notices something strange. When subjects aren't doing any task, when they're just resting, a specific network of brain regions lights up, not dims down, lights up. He called it the default mode network. The DMN is most active when you're not focused on anything external. It's a network of self-referential thought. replaying the past, simulating the future, constructing a narrative about who you are and what might go wrong. In other words, the default mode network is the neurological address of Chitta Vritti. The Vedic seers didn't have the vocabulary of neuroscience. The neuroscientists didn't have the vocabulary of Sanskrit, but they were mapping the same territory. And this matters enormously when we are talking about stop overthinking mind tricks, because most of what gets sold as a fix addresses the content of your thoughts. Change the thought, replace it with a better one, reframe the narrative. But Chitta Vritti isn't about the content, it's about the spinning itself. The default mode network doesn't care what story it's telling, it just needs a story to run, which is why you can successfully challenge one anxious thought and immediately generate another one to replace it. You didn't stop the network, you just gave it new material. This is the gap that almost no one in this space addresses. The techniques that dominate, breathe, be present, challenge the thought, they work on the surface, they manage the symptom. But the default mode network, the chitta vritti, the deep groove of accumulated samskara, that requires a different kind of intervention, not management, dissolution. The Vedic framework says the spinning stops not when you fight it, but when you withdraw the fuel. And the fuel, in both ancient and modern terms, is unconscious identification. You believe the thought is you. You believe the story the DMN is generating is reality. The moment you see it as a pattern running in your mind rather than the truth about your life, the grip loosens. This is what Vedic philosophy means by Maya. Not that the world is fake, but that the filtered, conditioned version of reality your mind projects is not the whole picture. Your brain is always running a model. The model is not the territory. And recognizing that gap is the beginning of real mental clarity, not just managed anxiety. I want to tell you about a practice before I name it, because the name makes it sound smaller than it is. Imagine you're driving a route you've driven 1,000 times. Your hands move, you brake, you turn, you arrive, and you have almost no memory of the journey because you weren't there. Your conditioned pattern drove the car. Now imagine halfway through that drive, something unusual happens. A dog runs into the road. Suddenly, you're completely present. The automatic pilot brakes. You're actually there. That moment of interruption, that's the mechanism. The practice I'm about to describe is a way of creating that interruption intentionally before the loop runs you somewhere you didn't choose to go. The Vedic tradition calls it viveka, discernment, the capacity to distinguish between what is real and what is constructed, between perception and interpretation, between what happened and the story the mind added to what happened. In practice, it works like this. At any moment when you notice the loop starting, the replay, the projection, the spiral, you ask one question before you do anything else. Not, is this thought true? That's too abstract. The question is this a fact or is this an interpretation? Fact, my colleague didn't respond to my message for 2 hours. Interpretation, they're angry with me. I said something wrong. This is going to become a problem. Fact, I made an error in that presentation. Interpretation, I'm not competent, people noticed. My credibility is permanently damaged. The default mode network generates the interpretation automatically, instantly, and with total confidence. It feels like fact. It has the emotional weight of fact. But it isn't. It's the samskara running. It's the old groove filling with water. When you pause and ask fact or interpretation, you're not suppressing the thought. You're not fighting it. You're stepping outside the pattern long enough to see it as a pattern. That's viveka. That's the interruption. And every time you do it, you're doing something neurologically real. You're activating the prefrontal cortex, the deliberate, conscious part of the brain, which creates a competing signal to the DMN's automatic loop. You're not eliminating the groove. You're carving a new one alongside it, slowly, repetitively, consistently. This is why the practice has to be daily, not because it's hard, but because the old groove is deep. The samskara has years of reinforcement behind it. You're not going to dissolve it in a week, but you can, with consistent practice, make the new channel so familiar that the water starts choosing it automatically. The stop overthinking mind tricks that actually work aren't tricks at all. They're practices, repeated, patient, unglamorous interruptions of the automatic pattern. And the question, fact or interpretation, is the simplest version of that practice I've ever found. Start today, not with meditation, not with journaling, not with an app. The next time the loop starts, before you follow it, ask fact or interpretation. That's the whole practice. Do it once today, do it twice tomorrow. Let the groove change. That question, fact or interpretation, sounds simple. And it is simple, but applying it consistently when you're inside the spiral is a different thing entirely. If you have tried this kind of approach on your own and you still find yourself getting pulled back into the loop, especially under real pressure, the fastest way through that isn't another video. It's a conversation. I do free one on one calls, 15 to 30 minutes, no pitch, completely personal. You tell me where you're stuck. I tell you exactly what I see and what I do next. You walk away with a clear next step for your specific situation, whether we ever work together or not. The link to book is in the description at https://dailymindreset.com consultation. If the pattern has been running long enough that you're tired of managing it and you want to actually dissolve it, that call is where we start. If this way of looking at the mind is useful to you, subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from. Tell me this: when you notice yourself in the loop, what does it usually feel like first? Is it a thought, a physical sensation, or something else?